Hello and welcome to another edition of Ephlux Insights. My name is Barbara Khan. I'm the entrepreneur in residence for this program. We're very proud to have finally gotten a hold of Dr. Morten Middelfart, the CTO of Target in Florida. And he's going to be talking to us about the USP of his business, but I'm just going to go into a bit about him. He's a technology founder, is the CTO and chief visionary of Target, and his focus is on developing ways to help businesses and managers and leaders make better decisions faster. He's done research into intelligent and intuitive decision making and has propelled Target's position in the world in light of business analytics and BI in the market. Today, Target is recognized by Gartner as one of the leading BI analytics developers and vendors in the world. Dr. Morten is very famous as far as I'm concerned because he's a skydiver, and one day I'm going to skydive with him, but that remains to be seen. Thank you for being on the program, Doctor, and could you just go into what exactly you're working on right now and why a brand leader should buy into what you're selling or what you're offering to the user base?
Yeah, of course. I would say what I'm working at right now, to the very core of it, is basically what I've been working on and my quest for more than 15 years, which is allowing everybody to make better and faster decisions throughout an organization. I think that what's most interesting about how the world has changed is how, let's say, a customer in general, let's think about ourselves. Whenever we want to buy a new product or service, we'll typically tend to Google that, and we'll typically tend to ask our friends on social media about it. And the interesting thing is that if we do that, then most likely everybody else is doing that too. And if you think about that, it wasn't so like maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So that change in buying behavior really means that in general we know that around 60 to 70% of a buying behavior is going on online before even reaching out to the vendor who we may think of having to solve that problem or add the value we want. And for me, assisting leaders and managers in organizations, that is a big challenge because I want to allow the decision-making systems to kind of like tap into that information, not only the internal information that we have, but also reach out and see what's going on Google, what's going on social media, and then integrate that with all the existing, the classical business intelligence and analytics challenges of a company. So that's one aspect that really has my concern, is the reaching out into what sometimes we refer to as big data, but I would rather think of it as just external data that are very interesting, data that can determine whether we'll be a failure or success, yet there'll be data that we cannot control. We can't control the availability, we can't control the shape, the quality of the data as we can with internal data. So coping with that dynamic of the external data, once we want to tap into what's going on in the 60 to 70% of a buy-in procedure or process, I think it challenges the traditional way of thinking about business intelligence and analytics. In addition to that, I'm very much concerned with mobility, wearable devices. You could even say the Internet of Everything, or things that I want, decision-making capabilities to be present, on mobile devices or even on wearable devices like Google Glass, or later on also embedded in machinery on a production line. Wherever you want to, enhance a decision-making process, I want to be there with software that assists and allows you to do that much faster than what you could do before. So I would say that there are two strings to what I'm really concerned with, and those would be the ones.
All right, that's actually quite close to something that we see a huge trend in Hong Kong. So there's a lot of retailers that have been investing into technology that allows them to sort of look at the patterns in terms of what's happening in the weather from one aspect, and then how buying behavior has changed because the weather changes in certain aspects. So when it rains, people will buy certain mats that they'll fit into their doors, and then they'll sort of like hold back the rain because infrastructure isn't good enough in certain areas that they could offset that. But then when it becomes sunny, they'll buy a different set of products. So the idea that when you know it's about to rain, or you get a forecast it's about to rain, a retailer can actually adjust what they have at the front of the store, as opposed to that same item is way at the back, as if you didn't know that this particular item was going to be in demand. So that definitely falls into, I guess, what you're working on in terms of loss of control that managers face quite often. Could you give me some examples of how you've implemented something and the client's reaction or client's usage cases in terms of how they've benefited from something along these lines?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of my favorite examples is really about how we in Target eat our own dog food. Because really, if you look at our world, the traditional world of reporting and, I would even say dashboarding and some of that traditional way of thinking is really changing as as an effect of this changing in buying behavior. In the old days, it would be a lot about business intelligence would be synonymous with scheduling some reports, sending them to everybody, or allowing people to just get a dashboard and look at information. But the point being is that either way, it would be a human mind that would have to decide whether to go look at something or when to send a report. I think that one of the interesting thing is how analytics is, suddenly it needs to be the answer to the fact that more data goes external, more data goes online, and the volume of data thereby increase. So now suddenly we need systems that will tell us when you should be looking and where you should be looking. Whereas in the older days, we would just like look at everything and then decide ourselves. Going into that is something that I tested against data myself. Looking at the general trending on Google, how many people are really today seeking for business intelligence compared to how many people are seeking for analytics, and even how many people are seeking for analytics on something big data, or how many people are seeking for marketing intelligence, and so on and so on. And using those trending information on Google was really directing me in ways to develop the tools that I'm basically talking about today. So I would even say the prototypes of the software that we developed 3 years ago directed then how not only the prototype should unfold to a real product, but it directed the entire direction of our product strategy. So I think to me that's a beautiful example when it happens to yourself. And clearly then I got excited and I wanted to share this with the world. And we have of course other examples. I mean, one of my favorite examples is just within the clothing industry, where there's a trend towards people using sporting wear, also like maybe even in business meetings, but at least for wearing where they would normally use, shall we say, more formal wear. And just following the brands like Nike, Adidas, to mention something European as well, and compare them to more classical brands, you'll see a change in behavior there. And if I'm a manager of a clothing store, I would definitely wanna pick up on trends like that before I just see the trend hitting me as selling less and less of the product I have. So basically asking all the questions that are not just about your own data is very interesting. And by the way, another thing, because what you talked about before, I think it's a beautiful example as well, about like how there'll be some external very relevant data. They may not be 100% perfect at all. I mean, weather forecasts here in Tampa anyway tend to not always be perfect. But again, 80% is good enough, to do much better when the alternative is zero, So again, those would probably be my favorite examples. Like, whenever buying behavior is changing, is where it gets really interesting. It's not so much about optimization. It's about, understanding disruptive trends as they emerge and understanding them to where you can, of course, help create value in the world once that disruption happens, and maybe even be part of the disruption.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like for this particular example, I've shared this example and case study in a couple of places, and people do say, why don't we have that in the developed world? Well, the reason is that the developed world doesn't want to have prediction in place. The reason we have these sort of there's analytics and then there's actionable analytics. What do you do with it? The actionable aspect only came in because in the developing countries, there isn't a concept that there's one suburb for, there's one part of the city for the people who are wealthy, then there's one part of the city that for people who are middle class, and then another part for who's poor. There's people clustered all over the place. And what often happens in this particular context, what happened in Hong Kong, Afghanistan, and Pakistan for this particular retailer was that there was one retail location, a very large retailer, where you'd have upper class, middle class, and lower class people walking in, and the upper class people didn't like it, that they were shopping in the same place as other people. So what they, after seeing a lot of drop-offs in the terms of you're having less footfall and all that, the management came to a point where they said, we don't want to tell the lower class people not to shop here, but we want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So we'll do a bit of prediction. We'll figure out what they're coming in for the first place and just hand the bucket over to them and be like, and okay, go on your way. And that doesn't necessarily apply in other parts of the world where it's a bit more developed and you don't necessarily have the same income groups shopping in the same location at the same time, possibly in the same mall, but not in the same stores within those malls. So that's how the application aspect of that came into there. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I don't know if I'm completely, in at least, from where I come from, I think that any customer is valuable, and so I'm not, clearly we can use analytics for many things, and I'm not going to be the judge of that. From a personal standpoint, I like it better when we create opportunity rather than we decide who we really want to, deal with and not. But let me tell you another interesting example about the developing world, because this was actually a very interesting. I had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of bright guys studying at Carnegie Mellon University in Rwanda. And they asked me about how I think that big data could assist in the developing world, and I really think that analytics of these external data, let's say, trying to predict weather, can help. And same also, if you have an infrastructure in a country that is, let's say, overwhelmed with how the world is evolving, then I would say analytics and big data allows you maybe even to leapfrog over that. If you could predict weather better and you embrace that, maybe you can have that compensate for an infrastructure that may not be as strong, for, let's say, a heavy rainfall, or and also, one of the examples that I heard about is how if you have fishermen, it's simply using cell phones, and then on the sea, and let's say, and this here's an example also from the Eastern Africa, where suddenly you have fishermen at sea being able to, instead of having to take all the fish they catch, put them directly on the, in a certain freezer somewhere, or maybe not even having a freezer. Now suddenly, using just something as simple as a cell phone, they can make the operation a little bit more on demand, to where people can actually almost ask them, I need a fish like this, and then they'll go catch it and deliver it directly on the shore where people want it. And just having technology to kind of compensate for, and maybe leapfrogging over the old way of doing things. Who says that just because some countries got a head start in developing their infrastructure, that everybody have to go through the same path? There will be ways that we can kind of bend, time and space for those countries who want to not only catch up, but maybe even go one step further. And to me, that's where the beauty in technology lies more, when you can start doing stuff like that, where everybody gets a fair shot, and everybody gets opportunity. So I just like big data examples like those better than but it may just be me.
Yeah, big data, or as you say, external data. But so we've gone over now a couple of examples on your work with how you've developed new ways for businesses to react intelligently and efficiently to real-world challenges. Could you tell us a bit more about how you've enabled those same stakeholders to succeed and even thrive despite the occasional adversity? So you talk about how you're actively promoting the concept of human and computer synergy in cooperation as a fundamental shift for decision makers. Could you tell us a bit more about that in your work?
I can indeed. What I think is the most crucial part, and this here is something you can do whether it be on your own data, internal or on external data. I think that the key that's been overlooked in my world for a while is that we thought about business intelligence and analytics as something originating from a technical perspective. It's about somebody wanting a pie chart. It's about something wanting a certain report. Whereas in reality, it's about somebody who wants to make a decision. And one of the things that I've been working on for more than 10 years, and it was really an epiphany that I got when I was working on saying, instead of looking at this as technology, let's look about what is excellent leadership. What does it mean to be highly competitive? And one of the concepts that came into mind at that time was the cycle of observation, orientation, decision, and action that John Boyd conceived, to develop excellent fighter pilots on the Top Gun school, if you're familiar with the movie. And I basically took his concept and said, now let's say that that's an excellent concept for any type of decision making. Now let's see how, when we map the technologies, the dashboards, the analytics, the agents and everything, when we map that into that cycle of observing is like looking into the world with an expectation of what should be. Typically you'll do that through a dashboard, but then when something is kicking out, why don't you have the ability to analyze data directly from there? And by the way, not by somebody telling you how it should be broken down, but by you being freely able to pursue whatever root cause there may be. Based on that, you figure out what's going on. You make a decision about that. You put that into action, and maybe you even have an agent monitor, autonomously the data from now on. Should that problem or opportunity come back again? To where now suddenly you're moving through a complete decision cycle really, really fast using technologies. And what came to mind very clearly to me as I explored this in, I believe it was 2003, was really that all the technologies we have are really about solving one specific task. So none of them really went that complete cycle. So that's been my quest all along, is like to integrate the technology. So to me, it's not about one chart or one report. It's about how fast can I move the user through that complete cycle of continuously observing. When something happens, you orient yourself, you figure out what's going on, then you decide, then you put something into action, and then you do it all over again. And that's really what I've been spending a lot of effort. And every time I see some technology coming up, I'll always be thinking about how can I apply that technology to this loop of improving and excelling in decision making. And if it doesn't assist in that, then I really don't think it's very interesting. So to me, it's all about that decision cycle more than it's about a particular cool technology. But then again, they tend to go along hand in hand, by the way. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the core concept of what I've been working with, because then a lot of usability, a lot of user interaction design goes along with trying to unleash as much technology as fast as possible in support of that loop. But at the end of the day, that's what we're all about, I think.
All right, but you know this question comes up quite a bit in these the business intelligence and the data, what people call big data circles, that we're trying to get to a point. Yeah, I mean, you phrase it in a very unique way. I feel, where you talk about at the end of the day, you shouldn't think of it as technology. We should think about what the technology does at the end of the day. The final impact of the technology is to make better decisions and maybe faster decisions, and that it could be the difference between winning and losing, between being a market leader and being a market follower. But just to sort of go on the abstract, and when you watch science fiction movies and you see that there's this technology that's being shown in obviously very science fiction, and there you think to yourself, it's just not possible. That we are coming to the era where we have smart clothing, smart tech, maybe a wristband on our hands like Nike Plus, tracking your movements, possibly telling you that, hey, your heartbeat was higher than it should be. Maybe you should go to see the doctor. There's reports, maybe they're true, maybe they're untrue, that claim that Bill Gates has a smart house that tells him, your heat the heat of your body, it's increased to this level or decreased to this level. You're possibly coming down with the flu. Do you feel like if we went to the farthest extents of what business analytics and then we apply it to personal analytics, and business intelligence and big data, if we went to the farthest extent of your possible imagination, like if we did everything that you could think of, do you think that'd come to a point where humanity wouldn't just do anything? We'd just be sitting around and things would happen for us? We wouldn't be making any decisions, because they would say that I mean, how long would the computer have to, how long would the technology have to observe the person to figure out what their dislikes and likes are, and then adjust and plan their entire life for them for the rest of the duration that the person is existing, and they have to do nothing? How far do you think we are in that sort of aspect, getting to that absolute science fiction that we usually see?
Well, I can easily answer that. I don't think we're very far, and I don't think we're ever going to get to that point that you describe where computers will do anything. I think there's a very interesting aspect hidden in that thinking there, because what I've learned is kind of like this: whenever we talk about how to apply computing to decision making, it's not about necessarily all the computational power. I would actually say it like this: if you have a very confined space, let's say a chessboard, and all the rules are set, they're not changing, then it's simply a no-brainer, before a computer can beat the most talented chess player in the world, which again we know that happened, more than 10 years ago, right? So that was like well, actually it's almost 20. I'm getting old. Uh, but but um, but interestingly enough, I think that that's really not the point, because I think life is much more complicated, and I think life is about adaptation and survival. So if you think about leadership, to me, and running an organization or running a personal life, it's about the computer can out remember us and out calculate us at any day of the week. We can, I mean, the human brain, even if you're very skilled, like remembering, say, somewhere in between 7 to 11 things in your head is actually going to be a challenge for most, especially like the average person. Some people will be able to remember even more, but a computer can remember billions of pieces of information without forgetting any of them, and it can do that today, and it's probably going to be more tomorrow. And the same with calculating. So the computer can process more information and remember more information. So as a human being, we should never try to even compete with that. And I mean, you'll be surprised how many people in a managerial task still spend their time trying to second guess a computer, instead of just accepting that the computer is probably more right than they are in terms of remembering the past, and so on and so on. So, but anyway, let's say that we just decide computers probably remember and calculate faster than us. Now let's spend some of the knowledge about how our brain, the meat computer up here, how that works, completely different. Because what I think is so fascinating, and now I'm going in a little bit to skydiving, because you told before, we talked about before, how you think that's pretty cool and fun, but it's also like, for me, a lot of research and a lot of knowledge that kind of like very that emerge from that. So what I've learned is whenever we go skydiving, let's say I take a passenger up and do a tandem jump, and this is a very easy experiment to conduct. That's why I love it so much. First jump, the brain will kind of like black out for a few seconds the moment you leave the plane, and
Okay
it's
then.
almost like it's a reflex almost. It's like, I believe the reason being that the brain is suddenly processing completely new information. Completely anything is new. The world as you know it ceased to exist, and you're somewhere else for a brief moment. And so it's kind of like you black out, you don't remember the first few seconds. Then what happens is the brain, gets in, and you kind of like you become aware within that few seconds, and then everything is, you're aware for the rest of the ride. But the interesting thing here is when you do it the second time, the brain will be able to see everything. You'll see the plane leaving above you. You'll see everything as you leave. So the brain, our beautiful meat computers, only needed one example to start adapting, to start learning, and to start to understand a completely new environment. No computing technology will be able to do that. So the real reason that we should apply human and computers together is really we should lead. We should be the ones, coming up with the new path. The computer is going to do more of the same. It's going to do it more efficiently. It's going to remember a lot. But whenever the rules change, the human brain is far superior in adapting to that. And that's what we should realize, when running future organizations. It's just that we should embrace how our brain is different from computers. We should not think that computing will outmatch our brains in adaptation. It's not going to happen in a very, very long foreseeable future, and I'm close to saying probably not ever, because I don't think that you can ever analyze to the point where you get the ability to just break rules, to change the rules, and in one cycle you learn, and you're already moving. And I think, by the way, that's why evolution got us so far anyway. I think computers does something so well, like whenever it's about calculating, whenever it's about remembering, computers are far superior to us, and we should of course let computers do that. And then we should just understand that our challenge as leaders is really understanding the future path when the rules change, more than it is about doing more of the same that we've already been doing, because computers will probably do better than that. And that's also, by the way, when we talk about big data, external data, and all the unpredictability in that, I believe that's where the human mind has a lot more to do in terms of selecting what data to analyze. Because I know that a computer scientist would just say like this, oh, just take all the data and analyze, and we'll find out what is interesting. But that is a very expensive, a very inefficient way of doing it, if you think about it. Because if you could just use your human brain, try to apply your knowledge, your ability to spot, let's say, a weak pattern, let's use your human brain where it's strong, and then whenever you want to explore something, have computers then follow through on delivering the analysis. So it's not that computers are going to take over that adaptability aspect of an organization or of our personal lives anytime soon anyway, and even in as deep a future that I see. But this really comes into, by the way, why I like the word human computer synergy, because it's about, if we understand our strong points with a human brain and the strong points of computers, then we can start acting together as a high performance team. And way too often do I see that we just basically try to use computers, in some analytics, try to use computers to do human, but even worse, when we start to try to use humans to do computing, yeah, both things are wrong, and it's a synergy, it's an acceleration of the both.
Yeah.
That is the answer.
Yeah, we actually to that question where I was asking about the science fiction, we had a CTO. He's actually listening to us right now. He asked a question about, yeah, it was a follow-up question. He was kind of expecting you to say, yeah, we will move in that direction. So the follow-up question was going to be, uh, could you tell us about, how You're saying we're not gonna get there, but I guess to paraphrase this question in light of what you just said, you're saying that technology will get better and smarter as time goes on, but will it replace humanity? Will it replace our level of understanding and adapting to possibly adversity? Or will it just completely shut down? Possibly not, because human beings, we become stronger when things get bad, as opposed to maybe machine. Something bad happens, and it'll think to itself, "We'll never do this again. It's a bad idea. You know, the ROI was low. This one-time activity where the traffic dropped or whatever else didn't go our way, bounce rate went up. Let's not do it ever again." But human beings have to do it again. Interesting enough, Dr. Morton and I were talking.
I would actually say it's the other
Yeah,
way around. I would say the human would be able to learn faster. I mean, I
yeah,
know
yeah,
that the human brain is also resistant to change.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
actually another aspect we need to really be aware of and deal with. But if
Yeah.
we decide to be agile, then the human brain will be superior than computers. And of
Yeah.
course, you can have the computer mimic, the human brain, but it can never be the adaptive engine that we have.
Yeah, yeah. But what I meant, I mean, I completely agree. What I actually meant was that the human being will know that regardless of how much I want to change my situation, I'll probably go through this again. So I might as well learn from it as quickly as possible. The machine knows that being a machine, I don't have to go through this over and over again. I can probably just avoid the situation altogether or just diversify my tasks. It's not a sentient being. But the question, I guess, I'm sort of paraphrasing the question that came in. He's asking about, technology will get, smaller, more efficient, much faster. How do you see how do you through your eyes see the increased opportunity for the computers to handle the repetitive and menial tasks for
Oh yeah.
everyday decision making, and not just from a manual labor perspective, but even from a everyday senior management perspective? They are menial and repetitive tasks taking place in a decision making space. So how would you look at that in terms of what a computer, what your work and what technology can do for that?
Oh, I mean, technology can do anything in regards to where data is needed, I think, I mean, also just and this may be also me as a commercial software developer. I like to build stuff that people will actually want to use. So I think that if we can apply all the intelligence, say, in computers to deal with all the data and point our direction to only the relevant points of data. And I mean, in deciding relevance is of course at the end of the day, it's really a mathematical question about whether something is interesting or not. But direct our attention, but then I think that with the bigger, strategic decisions in an organization, I still believe that at the end of the day, you want a human brain involved in that. But the computer will do all the preparation, all the cleaning of noise, all the directing of attention, and that's how I see it. For the more trivial tasks, I agree with you that then, and I even, of course, wrote this in my book that's 10 years ago now, about like running the full OODA loop, as I talked about early on, running that fully autonomous. That is going to be possible for a lot of also managerial tasks. But once we get into like the leadership room, the more strategic, the more, where do we decide to move ourselves in the future type of thing, where adaptation starts playing a role. I think that we should just do more of that as leaders, really, and get better at that. And then we should let computers do the rest. That's so I see like a a lot of room for technology to assist in the making the human mind quickly aware and preparing, that in that process. But yeah. So to me, I tend to, you know lean towards the synergy aspect, and then just make computers really fast at everything that the human brain needs before it makes a decision.
All right. We have a question from earlier when I had shared over the last week. I shared on Twitter about the fact that I'm going to be interviewing you, and a lot of people wrote in. We have this question from the CTO of one of the leading agencies in the UK. They focus on technology as a basis for any aspect of the brand campaigns that they come out with. So this technology can be offline and online in terms of its implementation with the customers. And in regards, so the question is, Dr. Morten, thank you for being on the program and taking out the time. You have done research in the area of development of Target self-service analytics and data integration initiative called Target X Bone. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this properly. The person has asked, could you talk to us a little bit about that and how I could apply it within my agency as an agent, as the agency is the customer, and also as the agency's clients are the customer. So in this case, I have more medical-oriented brands under my portfolio than I have anything else. So could you just refer to how I can use this and benefit from it?
Of course. And I mean, the target, we call it Crossbone, but feel free to call it Xbone as well. I know that we didn't spell it out. So the target Crossbone technology is really one of the first tools that we've developed and now also have a lot of very interesting traction with. That deals with the big data aspect of things. And what Target Crossbone really does is that it allows self-service data analytics, but it also allows you to do self-service data integration, meaning that you can basically grab any external data source that you come across and basically just drag drop into, you know, into Crossbone and start analyzing that very second. And that the ability to just not having to do anything, that there will be no traditional extract, transform, and load process as we usually see in data warehousing or business intelligence. You simply bypass that completely. So what does that mean from a business? It means that now you can start very efficiently to experiment with the external data. And it really blends really well with what I said about the adaptability, because now suddenly it becomes a human task to say, I think these data look interesting. Let's just see if it checks out once I test the hypothesis. You know, the scientific process of saying, I have an idea, let's see if it works in reality. You short circuit that process really fast because you allow everybody testing their ideas against real data without all the hassle of committing completely to the data. With Crossbone, you just throw the data away if it doesn't work. If it works really well, you may decide to keep it in Crossbone, or you may decide to migrate it all the way to your more traditional data structure, or to some of the new, like say Hadoop-based data structures, or whatever you want. But Target Crossbone allows you to sit at the very front of all the data hitting you and decide what to do with it. And to me, that's a very, very important task that's been completely overlooked in all the talk about big data, because it's all been about, let's grab all the data and see what works. Why not be able to be extremely efficient at testing what data actually does work or may look as if they work, and then thereby reduce, reduce the investment in the back end where we need to store the relevant data, perhaps to a fraction.
Right.
So it accelerates that. And now for that particular agency in the medical field, I mean, this may be a very ideal tool to just allow, just take research data, drag drop it directly in. Maybe you don't need to suck it into R or do some, maybe you can just drag drop it with in a second, For bigger data, maybe you want Google Trends data, drag drop it in and you'll be fine. I mean, we even have like tools that will do that even easier, because we believe that analyzing what people are looking for at Google is probably going to be relevant for everybody, One thing is, like, you could, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with the products, what are the future products going to be? But it may even be, say, in the medical field again, if people are looking for, say, flu medicines or flu shots, it may be an indication that a flu is actually happening already, So getting an answer like that through Google really fast may be more efficient than trying to run through all the practitioner doctors and ask, oh, what are you seeing right now? So weak indications, being able to tap into that really fast is definitely, and where we see target Crossbone applied a lot is really to anywhere where you either use survey data like on the fly real quick, or where you just want to grab something from the internet real quick and analyze it. And then of course, you can migrate from there, whether the answer then be one or the other. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, clearly I would love to touch more on the business value, but I sense that we need to clear the technical issue as well.
Yeah, definitely. You're more than welcome to talk about that, but yeah, I guess I get where where you didn't go further into it. We've got two very interesting questions, like we discussed off the record before. One is from a CTO of a company that considers itself to be a competitive target, but the person is quite frustrated with his question. So he's a CTO. His title is somewhere near Vice President of Technology. It's quite a frustrated question. And the second question is on the marketing side, another competitor altogether that's in Spain. So the first question from the CTO or the VP technology, first he's very enamored. The question has come in a language that I'm familiar with, but I'm just translating as best as I can. He's enamored of the aspect that you have this element within your own company on research. So you are the market leaders. You are doing research, and on that basis, you are creating technology and services, or you're using technology to better the services based on your own research. So his question is basically like he's asking. He's stating that I would like to be the next Dr. Morten, and I'd like to be the guy at my company who's bringing the change, bringing in the services, as opposed to following people like yourself, as opposed to copying your ideas, which is what we're doing right now. And I'd like to put in the element of intelligence and intuitive decision making and research in our organization. How can I? And he brings this up, and he's written in brackets. How can I? And I'm ashamed to admit this. Bring an R&D division in my company, and in your situation where you've worked with Target for a solid above a decade, I assume, you've been with them for quite some time. If you were to come into an organization fresh as a CTO, how would you bring in the change, or how would you convince upper management to bring this sort of element into there, where you're not just copying other people's ideas that are on the market and buying them off and reverse engineering them? How would you bring this element into the company, where you'd say that we have to invest and we have to be willing to make mistakes and research and make mistakes and try new things out, and we have the patience to go through many processes? I'm sure Xbone was, I don't know, prototype number 14, 16. We don't know. You won't tell us. It's all good. But how would you go about that in a new company in terms of convincing them to step away from this aspect where you have to copy everyone, to start saying that you need to lead the change instead of following the change?
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think that, I mean, my first answer to that would be start doing research. Basically just no matter how small, start doing research, because that's really what it wasn't like a conscious decision in my mind to just say we wanna, we want to do this exactly. Like for example, like understanding how the OODA loop and that tight integration between the disciplines work was really a product of just trying to do research. And I mean the research that I started out back in 2002 was just saying, how can we do the next big thing? And what happened is, instead of saying I want to research what can we do, what is everybody else doing, I said I want to figure out what is excellent leadership and management, and then from that point on say, how can I build a system that embraces that? So start doing the research. It's not expensive once it's just like more of the, shall we say, philosophical, or trying to understand. And when you pursue something that is the bigger goal, like let's say excellent leadership and management, then the computer systems that you need to have in place will kind of like reveal themselves. And I'm pretty sure that if you then tell upper management from that perspective, saying that we're really pursuing the wrong thing. I mean, I personally, I completely understand and I agree with the idea that if you want to follow everybody else's footsteps, you're never going to get ahead. And some companies don't want to get ahead. Some companies are completely comfortable with just being, second to embrace something, and then just sell off the consultancy and never get the first mover opportunity. So that's fair enough. But if you want to try something new, I think the important thing is start doing the research. And then if you start doing the research, even if it's just one person, maybe, even if it's yourself, I mean, I would actually even say, if you're the CTO of a company already, start doing research yourself, because it's definitely gonna, chances are that you already, have. So, just do more, and do it with a broader goal, perhaps. And then, the systems that should be in place will reveal themselves. Methodology-wise, I do agree, because we're also talking a little bit about the prototyping. I believe that in general, and that's a little clue as well, disruption always comes from below, meaning that if you can solve a small problem first, and then you kind of like do that excellent, and then you build from there, as opposed to try to say, I want to solve all the problems in the entire world, and then move down in the market. So typically disruption starts from below, and it's also, so if you can solve one really valuable problem from for a user or for a customer, and then start learning real quickly about that, and you need to align at least part of your development cycles around rapid learning. And for me personally, in our organization, it meant that we actually had to break up our traditional product cycles, from trying to build one big product suite and do like a big release here and there. I prefer having like perhaps still like a backbone of software, but that's more as a platform, and then have a number of additional apps that kind of like you allow to run much faster cycles, much speedier learning around. And if you do that with the newer technologies, the ones that you think may or may not work, then you actually have a very cost-efficient way of probing new technology, and then add that to the research you were just doing. So the research is probably going to reveal, let's say, 5 plausible, interesting directions. Of course, you probably need upper management if that's not, if you maybe you need to sell the idea, and then try it as apps first. Try it with something that allows you to do a complete end-to-end solution that adds value to a customer. Learn real quickly around it, and then build from there. And then the products that don't make it, let's say you have 5 ideas, you try them all, only 2 make it, retire the other 3 fast, and then stick with the 2, and now suddenly you changed your entire product positioning and the position in the market. So that's, I mean, that would be my suggestion on how to do it. I mean, for actually very few resources, and I feel you in the sense that I understand that developing new things is about making change. So therefore, following somebody else is really not satisfying that need and that calling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was quite like I had a long talk with this particular person because we try to get more information on what the question is, where the question comes from, and all that. It gives a bit more weightage than I can explain it to you even off the record. So in this particular person's context, he was really demotivated with this company. He's like, I got a bachelor's degree, then a master's degree, and I had all these dreams and aspirations. And turns out that I just have to buy something that's already on the market, re-engineer it, and probably sell it under our own name. And the person knows he's doing something unethical to a certain extent, and then there's obviously different definitions of what's unethical, what it is. But he had an aspiration of what he was going to do with his life, and he doesn't have it on his portfolio to be able to say that I created this. Because you can fool only so many people, but when you're in the technology circle, like he would tell me, when he's in the technology circle, and he tells them that we created this capability and it does these things. 9 out of 10 times there'll be a CTO in the room who says, so basically you copy that company, and he just smiles there sheepishly. This other question comes from a CMO of a leading brand. There's actually 2 parts of the question. The first part, I'm not really sure if I should say it, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. The first part of the question was, Dr. Morten, I'd like to hire you. How much would it cost? And what would it take to bring you in? And this company is, it's conglomerate. They do quite a few things, but they're very famous for a smartphone brand that they have. And if I had to rank it, I believe their smartphone brand is number 4 in the world. So they're doing quite well. They're not the Apple and Samsung. I'll put it that way. They're anything but Apple and Samsung. But they've asked, the CMO is asking, how much would it cost to bring you in, and where can I get in touch with you? So he even asked me. I was like, I'm not going to give the email address out until, and if Dr. Morten shows interest, then I'll probably give you his email address. Anyway, that's the
No.
first part of his question. But the second part is he's unsure. Well, obviously, as a technologist, you would believe that the product sells itself because of its excellence. He comes from a marketing background. Even I come from a marketing background. So his question comes from, would it be enough to just market the brand as number one, and would that be enough? In your experience, how has that worked out, where people would get a very good experience with your product and they would end up referring it in terms of getting more customers and more sales within their own circle? Or has it been enough in this particular space to just have a product that appears to be good and possibly not everyone's knowledgeable about it, and it still does well? So his question, it basically is that you guys are number one, as recognized by Gartner, as number one in the world for business intelligence and analytics as a developer and a vendor. How do I, as a CMO, position my company to that level? And he's asked for his company to be off the record. How can I be because they have a BI analytics subdivision within their company, as most of these conglomerates do. How can I bring my company to that level in terms of being known that well? And is it all about the product, or is it all about the marketing? How would you divide that in this industry?
Well, first of all, I'm very honored for the nice words, and and I would say they probably know just as much as I do, if not more, about answering that question. But let me still try a little bit, because obviously I believe in truth. I believe in personal commitment. I believe that you cannot do things half-ass. You gotta apply yourself. You gotta follow a dream or a calling or whatever, and then the path that goes along with that kind of like will reveal itself as you try to strive for that, with excellence. And that kind of like ties into what I said before. So obviously marketing is hugely important, and as I said before, having a good product today, I don't think is enough. I think you can have and by the way, history even have shown us, like way back, that best products in technology are not guaranteed winning at all. On the other hand, getting in front of customers, creating customer value, creating happy, people that tell everybody else is, and marketing is really like the key component in that, and it's becoming even more so with the buying cycles changing towards 60 to 70% of a decision-making process is done before. I mean, so in this case with telecommunication, it's a 60 to 70% before deciding on who to be your vendor is decided before the customer even starts interacting with you. But for sure, the customer will have been on your website, will have checked the prices, will have been matching, will have asked his friends, and so on, So being able to tap into that discipline, I think really technology and marketing is integrating extremely these next couple of years. I think the marketing department is the most interesting place in an organization in the next 5-10 years, probably even deeper, because suddenly becoming data driven in the marketing department is such a challenge, but it's also where all the magic will happen if you do it right. So clearly product development needs to be strong. It needs to have the right intent, the right value proposition, but marketing will be the ones knowing how to amplify that through their ability to reach out to customers in that early 60 to 70% where the product is perhaps not even touched. People will just be looking at the reputation of the product, what's being said on the website about the product, and so on and so on. So I think that the interesting so marketing is increasingly interesting, and I think that making sure to embrace social media, making sure to understand that Google is probably a good source for telling what people are looking for, even if people don't understand what they're saying themselves. Like, and I'm just using the metaphor of the medical situation, you know, saying people may not say I have the flu on Twitter, but they may be revealing behavior that looks as if they have it, right? So it's kind of like picking up on all those weak signals. The fact that we're interconnecting the world through, you know, the internet. Actually, I would say somebody was referring to the internet of data, which I actually think is a very awesome word, because it just means that there's so many clusters of interesting data that are out there telling us about what the future should be, and that goes for both marketing and for developers. So I think that the interaction between marketing and future product development is going to be more, and I think marketing is going to be very, very interesting. And it's going to be data driven for sure. Other than that, it's just going to be luck, you know. And you know, so you can do either or. But I think that data driven with a strong philosophy, at least that's what we've done. So for all that's worth.
All right, and the last question that we have in from an external viewer comes in from India. This person is a MS in computer science, a very specific aspect of network or engineering, and he is basically with the Tata Consulting Group. He's allowed us to mention his company, and he's I don't know if he's joking with the question or he's genuinely serious. He's first of all marveled at the aspect that you've got 2 PhDs. And now he's asking that, you know, if I want to get to your level of thinking, I believe, I'm giving a bit of a paraphrase of his question. So he's like, I believe that teachers make the student, and I believe that experiences make the student, or make the professional what they are today. Well, if you were to sort of think back between your time at Aalborg University in Denmark or Rushmore University in the United States, where are the 2 university experiences in your PhD do you think impacted what you've become today more than each other? Not 50-50. He's asking like what's 51%, what's 49%, which of the 2? I don't know if he wants to do his PhD from either, but he's just generally asking, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Where do you think that was the game changer aspect?
I mean, they are 2 very different experiences, I would say, and I'm not sure that one is better than the other. It's probably the wrong way of saying it. I think what mattered the most to me of all of this is the moment that you go from an MBA to any PhD. Is the moment you realize that now it's up to you. It's the moment you realize that what you've done all the way through your MBA is basically just reading what everybody else has been writing. Understanding how their research was. Now, once you get to the PhD, wherever that may be, whatever field that may be, now you're responsible yourself to kind of like carry on that tradition, start developing, researching your own stuff, start making a difference in the world. And that realization, I think, is really, really strong. And the funny thing is that you can even do that without a PhD, you know, or without even starting a PhD. It just really is a change inside yourself, saying, I want to do something different. But I think that once you have a master degree in anything, you are, of course, you know, a master in information and knowledge in that field. So now your obligation, or anybody's obligation, is then to say, how can I take the next step? If you're a PhD, then you'll learn, or if you're in a PhD program, then you'll learn about the methodology on how to research properly. What are the most efficient way of researching? What is critical rationalism, and so on and so on. You know, so you'll learn some tools. But really, to my mind, it's more like from the point after whatever goes on after the master degree is really up to yourself. So when you make that decisive, you know, change to say, I want to start using everything I have, but then I want to take the next step, then whether you do that yourself or in any PhD program, then you made that change that I believe, for me anyway, was the most significant one, because then suddenly even skydiving became research, you know. Then, you know, once you start kind of like getting into that mindset, whenever, and I believe that, you know, life will show us the path where, you know, interesting things are gonna come along to all of us that make sense to us, maybe even just personally, and then, you know, when we pick up all those little, you know, opportunities, then that is what defines our success or relevance or whatever you want to call it. But but in reality, it starts with the fact that you want to do what, in my mind, an education is meant to take the next step, not just recite what everybody else told already.
Well, that's a brilliant way of ending the session, Dr. Morten. Thank you for the time that you've taken out to speak to us. And I'd encourage everyone to look into the CTO's question, the one he asked Dr. Morten about market leader or market follower. Dr. Morten has 2 PhDs, one from Aalborg University and one from Rushmore University, as we mentioned earlier. The man has 7 patents in the United States and 25 patents worldwide. And if you can learn more about his research, ongoing and completed research, patents, and upcoming presentations on target.com, target.com/research. And if you're ever in Florida and you don't want to hear about BI or BA and human-computer synergy fields, if you're too bored to hear that or you're too tired of hearing that, you can always find Dr. Morten teaching others the principles of facts beat fear strategy as a skydiving instructor. So thank you very much, Dr. Morten, for taking out the time. Have a great day. I'd love to talk to you again very, very soon to have a follow-up session around the same subject. And I'd actually like to learn, as a final answer, if you could answer one of my questions that I didn't get to ask. How does Target, the company, market itself to its stakeholder groups, not just customers, to other stakeholder groups, including customers? Could you just tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, we've tried to be. I think that what's happened recently for us, like maybe over the past 2 or 3 years, we try to open up more and more, social media-wise, like have everybody, start talking about what they're doing, what they're concerned with, and stuff like that. And I think the fact that we kind of like, I like to think of it as, when you're in a nice restaurant and you have like the chef cooking, you can kind of like look through a window and you can see what's going on in the kitchen, along with everybody, filling the plates and serving them to customers. We try to do that same experience with our technology company. Open up, have people interact directly with the, deep in the development labs, or with people who have expert roles in their let's say manufacturing or in retail or whatever that may be. So we just kind of try to open up and then have ourselves be present in the now as best as possible, of course. And I also believe that social media opening that we've done in our company is probably the most changing. I mean, obviously we try, of course, to make sure that we're very present on the website and stuff like that as well. But I mean, I think that change in how we think about the social aspect of conducting ourselves on the internet has been very important for us. And I think that's also kind of the reason I'm here today.
Yeah, definitely. That is a huge part of why you're here today. I mean, now it's just frightening me, and I guess anyone else who's listening in right now. You're applying your market leaders' technology to measure possibly your own social media activities online and offline, and possibly seeing what is working, what is not working on the fly almost immediately, and you're being told what to add more to or what to subtract from. For the example you gave of try 5 things to work, use those 2, scrap the other 3. So you're doing that seamlessly and with your own technology. So thank you very much, Dr. Morten, for the time that you've taken out. Very busy person. It was really hard to get a hold of you, and that too for a good reason. You've got some brilliant presentations and brilliant videos online about your work that you've done. And again, the next presentation, the next talk that we have will be focused around your technology and new work that you've done. And we'd like to talk about case studies, if possible, at all with the customers that you have, usage cases, product usage cases, and if it's at all possible, something that you're about to release, about on the verge of releasing, possibly even a hint to it. But we'll see if we get lucky on that. And so thank you very much for taking out the time. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye.